Good evening and welcome. I am Uyai Anyeka and come to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Today on Spotlight Africa, Putin arrest warrant spanner in the works for South Africa. Liberia Supreme Court rejects bid to hold voter listing. Uganda military court jails 32 Kenyans for gun crimes. Syria to reopen embassy in Tunisia. Plus, Egypt accuses Ethiopia of buying time in Nile Dam row. For Africa on the rise, Ghana first to approve world changer malaria vaccine. The stories are all just ahead on Spotlight Africa. Do stay with us. First on Spotlight Africa, South Africa has said an international arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin over the Ukraine war was a spanner in the works ahead of a BRICS summit in the country in August. Pretoria, which has close ties with Moscow, has been faced with a diplomatic dilemma since the International Criminal Court (ICC) issued an arrest warrant against Putin, China, and South Africa in August. But the host nation is a member of the ICC and would be expected to make the arrest if Putin steps foot in the country. In another development, Liberia's Supreme Court has dismissed the opposition's request to halt the ongoing nationwide voter registration ahead of October's presidential and legislative elections. The collaborating political parties CPP claimed listing verdicts. The court said it saw no basis for disturbing the voters' registration exercise since the National Elections Commission (NEC) was not in violation of the Constitution as alleged. According to the court, the case did not constitute an election matter. Meanwhile, the court ruling allows the electoral body to move ahead with phase 2 of the voter registration exercise, having already conducted phase 1 last month, which was overshadowed by a series of technical glitches. Away from that, 32 Kenyan nationals have been sentenced to 10 years in jail by a military as well as illegal possession of ammunition, offences triable in a military court in Uganda. Uganda's Deputy Army spokesperson Colonel Dio Akiki has confirmed the sentences. Each offense attracts a 10-year jail term, and the court ruled that the convicts plea of guilt and will serve their sentences at Moroto Government Prison. Meanwhile, Uganda's army said the arrests were part of a disarmament exercise in the region. Still in Uganda, where a cabinet minister at the anti-corruption court ruled that the sureties offered up by Mary Goretti Kitutu lawyers were not sufficient. Kitutu was remanded in custody last Thursday after pleading not guilty to corruption over 14,500 corrugated iron sheets intended for vulnerable communities in the northeastern Karamoja region that rains, leaving many in the semi-arid area dependent on aid. According to reports, at least 10 other senior government figures are alleged to have received some of the stolen metal sheets. These include the Vice President, the Prime Minister, the Parliamentary Speaker, and other ministers. In the meantime, Tanzanian Vice President Philip Mpango has ordered police to close roads for only a few minutes and not for hours when clearing VIPs to pass. It came after police closed roads for 4 hours as Mpango toured the northern Mwanza region on Wednesday. He said this happened despite him warning the Inspector General of Police against long closure of roads. Thabo Bester, who faked his death in prison and fled to the East African state. Bester was flown to South Africa in a specially chartered plane following his arrest in Tanzania last week. His girlfriend, celebrity doctor Nafiva Makuma, who was arrested with him, has also been deported. her father has been charged with helping Bester escape from prison. Bester was at large for a year after it was thought he died by setting himself on fire in his prison cell in the South African city of Bloemfontein. A manhunt was launched last month after a new post-mortem investigation revealed the body was not actually his. Elsewhere, Syria is to reopen its diplomatic mission in Tunisia after more than a decade. The decision follows an announcement by Tunisia's President Kais Saied that his country has visited both the United Arab Emirates and Oman and has held talks with Saudi Arabia. Reports say later this week, 9 Arab countries are due to meet in Riyadh to discuss moves to end Damascus's isolation since the start of Syria's long civil war. We move now to Tunisia, where police used tear gas to disperse about 100 African asylum seekers and migrants who had been camping outside the headquarters of the UN Refugee Agency in the capital, Tunis, for some 25 days. The group, in an open letter, said they had taken refuge near the building after being chased out of several Tunisian cities following a February speech by President Kais Saied slamming illegal pre-registration activities from the 31st of March to the 17th of April due to a migration of the registration and identity system. Meanwhile, 10 people trying to reach Europe have drowned off the coast of Tunisia after their boat was wrecked at sea. Coast Guard says 7 has taken over from Libya as the main departure point for people fleeing poverty and conflict in Africa and the Middle East. The Tunisian National Guard says 14,000 migrants have been rescued in the first 3 months of this year, 5 times more than in the same period last year. Away from that, police in Tanzania are holding 63 Ethiopian migrants after migrants were arrested after their lorry was involved in an accident. ISA said about 100 Ethiopian immigrants sneaked into the country through the porous border between Tanzania and Kenya. According to reports, about 40 others are said to be on the run. Ethiopian migrants seeking better living businesses have been reopening in towns and cities across Ethiopia's Amhara region following 6 days of violent protest over plans to reorganize the armed forces. At least 5 people have died in the demonstrations. People took to the streets after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said he intended to integrate the country's regional forces into one national army in order to improve security and unity. Meanwhile, some in Amhara fear that without its Ethiopian army in the recent war in the northern Tigray region. Elsewhere, Egypt's Deputy Foreign Minister on African Affairs has accused Ethiopia of buying time through negotiations while continuing to fill its disputed Nile Dam without an agreement. In a statement on Wednesday, the minister condemned statements by Ethiopia that had accused Cairo of politicizing the Nile Dam dispute. The fresh row received mixed reactions in Egyptian local media. Prominent pro-state host Ahmed Moussa said Addis Ababa intentionally built the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam to harm Egypt and Sudan. Meanwhile, opposition TV host Mohamed Nasser blamed the Egyptian government and media for not taking a stronger stance against the issue. Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt have. In a related development, a prominent Ethiopian journalist has been allegedly arrested by people who are believed to be security officers. Reports say Dawit Bagshaw, a freelance journalist, was abducted by security forces on Wednesday evening. Mareja website said the Netflix to expand in Africa after creating hit shows. Stay tuned for details of this and more after this time out. Thanks for staying tuned, and now to the rest of the stories. In Kenya, Men Opposition Coalition has announced plans to hold direct engagements with the public. Raila Odinga said it remained committed to easing political tension through dialogue after its anti-government protest turned violent last month. It said it would hold its first town hall meeting on Thursday, followed by a public rally on Sunday in the capital Nairobi to amend a defense agreement with Britain after allegations that troops training there committed serious crimes. It means UK soldiers could be tried for murder, amongst other grave offences committed against Kenyans in Kenya. It comes after a lack of progress in getting justice for the 2012 murder of a young woman, Agnes Wanjiru. Wanjiru went missing after she was seen walking out of a Kenyan bar with British soldiers. The 21-year-old's body was later found. The UK Defence Ministry has insisted it has been cooperating with Kenyan authorities over the investigation after allegations of a cover-up reported by the Sunday Times in October of 2021. Elsewhere, there are reports from the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo of fighting involving M23 rebels near the city of Goma. According to reports this week, the rebels have been withdrawing from towns they had seized in recent months. This has brought hope that a peace agreement would see an end to have involved Congolese government troops, and so is not seen as a major setback to the peace process. Still on security matters, Mali jihadists affiliated to the Islamic State group have taken over a village in Menaka, a region that is now largely under militants' control. The Islamist militants seized another village, Tinamin, on Monday night following months of fighting. A local official who fled the regional capital Menaka confirmed the capture and said the insurgents were moving around the village with weapons. Since early last year, Islamic State in the Greater Sahara has launched a major offensive in the area as well as in Gao, another region of northern Mali. There have been battles with the Al-Qaeda-linked fighters as well as Tuareg former rebels who signed a peace deal in 2015. In a separate development, 17 people, including 3 children, are missing after a river while heading to a funeral ceremony in Michinji district. According to reports, 5 people managed to swim ashore. A local police commander, John Nkoma, told newsmen that the boat was small for that number of passengers. More rescuers are on today expected to start a search mission for the missing people. Meanwhile, authorities in the district are advising community members to avoid sailing in flooded rivers. Malawi is recovering from a devastating tropical storm last month that killed 511. The biggest paramilitary group is mobilizing troops in cities across the country. In a statement released in the early hours of today, the military accused the Rapid Support Forces (RSF) of clearly breaking the law. There are growing fears of a confrontation between the two sides. According to reports, the RSF leader Mohammed Hamdan Hameti Dagolo played a key role when the army seized power in Sudan in 2021. This week, leaders failed to meet a deadline to form a civilian-led government. Meanwhile, the breakdown of the talks has been blamed on differences between rival military factions. $175 million. According to reports, investment on the continent since 2016 has already created some hit shows. The announcement was made at an event in Johannesburg, where Netflix launched a report on its impact in South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. According to the reports, the company has created 12,000 jobs on the continent and intends to build on this success beyond just 3 countries. On Africa on the rise, Ghana is the vaccine called R21 appears to be hugely effective in stark contrast to previous ventures in the same field. Ghana's drug regulators have assessed the final trial data on the vaccine's safety. According to reports, malaria kills about 620,000 people each year, most of them young children. Meanwhile, it has been a massive century-long scientific undertaking to develop a vaccine that protects the body from the malaria parasite. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure you've been watching Spotlight Africa. I am Uyai Aniekan. Thanks for watching and do enjoy the rest of your evening.